I stood in the sterile, brightly lit corridor of Seattle General Hospital, holding a soft pastel blue gift box tied with a satin ribbon. Inside was a hand-knit cashmere baby blanket I had spent 3 weeks making. Stitched with the initials EV, I had been so eager to see my younger sister Nora and finally welcome my new nephew into the world. But as I reached room 412, I noticed the door was ajar by a few inches. And then a voice drifted through the gap. A voice that had promised to love me until death do us part. The lease on the lakefront condo is already active, my husband Julian was saying, his tone completely stripped of the usual stress he showed at home. Once the tech firm partnership goes public next month, I'm filing the papers. Adeline thinks she's just signing standard business restructuring forms, but she's actually funding the entire rollout. She's literally paid for our next 20 years. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Then came a soft, familiar laugh. My sister Nora. She always was the responsible one, Julian, always so eager to fix everyone's problems. Just don't let her get suspicious before the ink dries on the partnership agreement. A third voice chimed in. It was my mother, Eleanor. Her voice was calm, casual, as if they were discussing a weekend brunch plan rather than the systematic destruction of my life. I stood exactly 3 feet away from the glass door. I didn't burst inside. I didn't scream or throw the beautifully wrapped gift. Instead, a strange, absolute coldness washed over me. I turned around, walked down the quiet hospital corridor, stepped into the elevator, and walked out to my car. As I sat in the parking garage staring at the blue gift box on the passenger seat, I realized 6 years of my marriage and a lifetime of sisterly devotion had been a beautifully staged lie. My name is Adeline Vance. I am 31 years old, a senior architectural designer in Seattle. For as long as I could remember, I was the reliable daughter. When my father passed away, I was the one who managed the estate. When Nora needed her college tuition paid, I picked up extra freelance design consulting projects to cover it. I was taught to be the bigger person, to absorb the blows so the family could remain steady. Julian and I met when I was 25. He was an ambitious corporate consultant, always chasing a massive tech partnership that was just around the corner. For years, I carried the brunt of our mortgage and household expenses, believing that a true marriage meant supporting your partner's dreams unconditionally. When we faced the heartbreaking grief of 2 miscarriages, Julian slowly began to pull away. He blamed work stress, late-night investor dinners, and business retreats. I blamed myself, drowning my grief in my work, never wanting to look directly at the growing distance between us. Meanwhile, Nora had spent the last year bragging about a mysterious, wealthy entrepreneur she was seeing, but refused to introduce to the family. When she announced her pregnancy, our mother Eleanor threw her a lavish shower, praising her for bringing joy back to the family. When I had lost my pregnancies, Eleanor had quietly told me to move past it because dwelling on sadness wasn't healthy. Sitting in that dark parking garage, looking at the bank accounts on my phone, the puzzle pieces didn't just fall into place. They slammed together with a terrifying force. I drove away from that hospital parking garage without a single tear. The deep, gasping cries that usually follow a betrayal never came. Instead, my mind shifted into the hyper-focused, meticulous state I used when drafting complex structural blueprints. I pulled into the parking lot of a quiet coffee shop 3 blocks away and opened my laptop. My fingers were cold but completely steady. For the past year, I had trusted Julian implicitly, letting him handle what he called our joint venture portfolio. Now I began pulling on the threads he thought were buried deep beneath corporate jargon. Within 2 hours of digging through digitized bank statements, property registries, and tax filings, the terrifying scope of the fraud revealed itself. Julian hadn't just had an affair with my sister. He had systematically hijacked my identity to fund it. I found a recurring wire transfer from our joint savings account to a private luxury leasing company. Digging deeper into the digital public records of King County, I located the active lease for the lakefront condo Julian had mentioned. My stomach dropped when I opened the attached PDF copy of the contract. There, at the bottom of the page, was my signature. The elegant cursive loop of the A in Adeline was slightly too tight, slightly too rushed. It was a forgery, close enough to fool a busy leasing agent, but a blatant criminal act. He had used my pristine credit score and my documented income as a senior architectural designer to secure a high-end lover's nest for himself and my sister. But the betrayal didn't stop there. I found an unfiled corporate restructure draft for my independent freelance consulting LLC. Julian had subtly altered the bylaws in the fine print, positioning himself to automatically absorb 50% of the company's liquid assets the moment his tech firm went public. I closed my laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from Julian. "Hey babe, still stuck in this grueling investor meeting? Might be home late. Order some takeout. Love you." I stared at the screen, a cold smile touching my lips. I typed back, "No problem. Entirely understand. Good luck with the meeting." I immediately dialed a number I knew by heart. It belonged to Olivia Vance, no relation to me, but my brilliant former college roommate and one of the top forensic divorce attorneys in the Pacific Northwest. When I laid out the entire timeline, the forged lease, the LLC restructuring documents, and the conversation I had overheard, Olivia went completely silent on the other end of the line. "Adeline," she said, her voice dropping to a low, serious whisper, "this isn't a marital dispute anymore. This is grand larceny, identity fraud, and corporate embezzlement. You have a massive tactical advantage right now, but only under one absolute condition." "What's that?" I asked. "You play the part," Olivia instructed sharply. "The second you confront him, the second you scream at your mother or sister, the advantage vanishes. They will panic. Julian will move the hidden funds into offshore accounts. Your sister will delete the text trails, and your mother will start restructuring the narrative to make you look unhinged. Let them stay careless. Let them believe you are exactly the quiet, accommodating fixer you've always been." That evening, I walked through the front door of our townhouse. Julian arrived an hour later, smelling faintly of hospital soap and expensive cologne. "How's Nora doing?" I asked casually, keeping my back turned as I washed a dish in the kitchen sink. "Oh, she's doing great," Julian said smoothly, walking up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. He kissed the side of my neck. "The baby is healthy. Nora was asking about you, actually. She's sad you couldn't make it to the hospital today." Every nerve in my body screamed to drive the ceramic plate I was holding directly into his face. Instead, I leaned back into his chest and let out a soft, weary sigh. "Work was just a nightmare today, Julian. I'm so glad she's doing well. I'll have to stop by later this week." "That's my supportive girl," he whispered, completely blind to the fact that his universe was already beginning to collapse. For the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the devoted wife and hardworking designer. By night, while Julian slept soundly beside me, I sat in the glow of my monitor, secretly working with Olivia to build an airtight legal fortress. We subpoenaed the bank records of the luxury condo, obtained security footage from the leasing office showing Julian signing my name, and tracked every single dollar he had secretly bled out of our joint accounts. I watched him put on his suits every morning, adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror with the absolute confidence of a man who believed he had successfully stolen his future. He had no idea that I wasn't just compiling a divorce file. I was preparing a digital avalanche that would completely wipe his name out of the Seattle corporate world. The day of the tech firm's public launch arrived on a crisp, foggy Friday morning. Julian left the house at 6 a.m. in his sharpest charcoal suit, vibrating with the energy of a man about to claim everything he thought he had earned. The public rollout meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the firm's sleek headquarters downtown. At exactly 9:45 a.m., while Julian was standing in the green room reviewing his presentation, Olivia filed the emergency legal petitions simultaneously across 3 different venues: Family Court, the Corporate Registry, and the King County Precinct. at 10:05 a.m., just as Julian was introduced and stepped up to the podium in front of a room packed with high-profile investors, tech executives, and board members. Two plainclothes detectives stepped through the back doors of the auditorium. Accompanying them was a private process server hired by Olivia. The presentation stopped before it even began. In full view of the entire Seattle tech community and the company's senior partners, Julian was served with a comprehensive freezing injunction on all his assets, a corporate fraud lawsuit, and an immediate summons for identity theft and forgery. The senior partners looked on in horror as the detectives politely but firmly escorted Julian out of the auditorium to a waiting car for formal questioning regarding the forged lease. While Julian was sitting in an interrogation room, his phone buzzing violently with frantic calls from his now former business partners, I was sitting in my mother's living room. I had called a family emergency meeting. My mother Eleanor and my sister Nora were sitting on the couch, Nora holding the baby, both of them looking annoyed that I had disrupted their morning. "What is this about, Adeline?" Eleanor asked, crossing her arms. "Nora needs to rest, and I have things to do." Without speaking a single word, I placed a thick manila folder on the coffee table in front of them. Nora opened it, frowned, but as her eyes scanned the top document, the security footage stills from the leasing office and the bank records showing the wire transfers, the color completely drained from her face. Beneath that was a formal eviction notice for the lakefront condo, effective in 72 hours, because the primary income guarantor, me, had officially flagged the contract as a fraudulent instrument. "What is this?" Eleanor stammered, her voice losing its icy composure. "Adeline, what have you done?" "I didn't do anything, Mother," I said, my voice entirely flat, devoid of any anger. "Julian did, and you both cheered him on. I'm just taking my name back." "Adeline, please," Nora cried, her voice shaking as she looked down at her son. "You can't do this. We have a baby. Where are we supposed to go? Julian's partnership was supposed to fund everything." "Julian's partnership is gone," I replied calmly. "The board terminated his contract for gross moral turpitude and ongoing criminal investigations 10 minutes ago. And as for where you will go, I suggest you ask the man you stole from me, though it might be hard to reach him while he's sorting out his felony arraignment." Eleanor stood up, her face twisted in rage. "You are cold, selfish, and vindictive. He is your sister's child. How can you be so heartless to your own blood?" I stood up, slung my purse over my shoulder, and looked at my mother with total clarity. "You taught me for 30 years to be the responsible one, Eleanor. You told me to pay the bills, fix the problems, and take care of the family. I am simply doing exactly what you raised me to do. I am fixing the problem. Permanently." I walked out of that house and never looked back. The fallout was absolute. Julian avoided prison time by agreeing to a devastating plea deal that permanently stripped him of his corporate licenses, left him with a felony record, and transferred 90% of our combined assets back to my sole ownership during the rapid divorce proceedings. Nora and my mother had to quietly pack up the luxury condo and move into a cramped two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city, funded entirely by Eleanor's dwindling retirement. A year has passed since that morning in the hospital hallway. Sometimes I sit on the deck of my new home overlooking Puget Sound, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of a life completely rebuilt on my own terms. The people who thought they could erase me built their entire future on the assumption that I would keep accepting their cruelty in silence. They forgot that the person who quietly manages everything is always the one who holds the power to shut it all down. I entered that hospital hallway as a stepping stone for their greed, and I walked out of it as the architect of my own absolute freedom. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. We bring you powerful, calculated narratives of betrayal and ultimate justice every single week. Drop a comment below. At what point would you have walked into that hospital room? See you in the next video.